record and share my screen. All right. So from yesterday, just to do a quick review, everybody should make your own template, Flask template file, right? So this we'll continue to add to this as we go along, and you will be able to use this on the exam. I want to just reiterate that to put everybody's mind at ease a little bit. And I personally wouldn't be able to do the exam without this. I mean, there's just too much to keep in your head. So definitely make something like this, make it your own, right? I have mine set up how I set mine up, but you don't have to do what I did, right? Do whatever works for you. I have my README set up to be the notes or the checklist. So the first thing we do is make a separate directory, right? Which I already have because it's in a separate directory. We create our virtual environment, right? Pip env install Flask, and then we enter that environment, right? So if you're forgetting any of these steps, go over the checklist. And when I was learning Ruby on Rails, I was just lost. I had no idea. There's so much to keep track of. So I probably made, I don't know, a couple hundred Ruby on Rails apps. I just kept doing it over and over and over again until it started to make sense. So after the virtual environment, we're going to create our server.py. We start our server with Python server.py. We add views with our templates file. And then render templates, we import the render template method. And then I added this because I forgot to put a sample of the Jinja file. But basically, this is a sample of how Jinja works. So if we want to use our for loop, remember use the extension for Jinja, it's J4, and that'll automatically populate this stuff for you. And then to add static files, we have to create the static folder. And remember, the folders have to be exact, right? It has to be called static. The template file has to be called templates with an S. And that's pretty much where we left off. Any questions from yesterday, Chuck?
When I type J4, it doesn't try to create that link.
It doesn't do did you install the extension?
I'm not sure. What is the extension?
So go to your extensions tab. It's like this, looks like you're putting a puzzle piece together. I don't know what that is. Yeah. But it should be Jinja 2 snippets kit. So make sure that's installed, and it should work. After you install it, it should just work right out of the box.
Awesome.
Okay, cool. Any other questions from yesterday?
So where do you put the J4? Like how do you, can you go to that?
So the Jinja is going to go in our HTML file. So if I go back to my templates and I go to index, if I want to create a for loop like I have here, like I would just, to make this for loop, I would just say J4, right? And if I start typing J, it'll automatically come up. If I type F, it'll give me the options, and I'm just going to select J4. And then it'll automatically create the Jinja syntax for the loop. You have to fill in the details, right? So whatever data you're importing, you need to fill this in, and then whatever you want in between when the loop runs, you have to put it in. But otherwise, the Jinja syntax kit will help you. And I strongly suggest you use it, because if you forget like a % sign, right, when you're trying to type this out, this is just very prone to errors, right? So if you forget this % sign, it's not going to work, and you could spend 20 minutes or 2 hours trying to figure out why it's not working. So I think it's better to use this. Yes, I'm sorry.
That literally happened to me earlier. It was a dollar sign. It's like, why isn't this?
Yeah. Oh yeah. I spent, I think it was 2 months, because I had county or country instead of county. Countries, counties, there's like one letter missing. Yeah, so always use autocomplete. Because I mean, you're gonna make typos. There's no way to eliminate making typos unless you guys know how to do it. I haven't figured it out. Tyray.
Yeah, would you mind going over how to connect like the server.py to like other HTML files? So I know you can do like your index one, but if you needed to add like another file, could you go over that again real quick?
Let's do it. Yes.
Thank you.
So let me jump into today's content. So let's go there. Where am I? So day 5. This is what we're going to talk about today. So I want to at least, well, I don't want to do everything in the morning. I want to take our time because we're going to be talking about post form submissions. And this is crucial to understand. Okay, so this is the crux of what we're going to be doing. We're going to be using forms going forward. So I kind of want to spend probably the morning on form submissions and sessions and redirecting, and then we'll talk about counter or hidden inputs and everything else in the afternoon. So maybe we'll see how far we get. But I'm trying to emulate like what I want you guys to do when you're going over this. So as you're going through the platform, you should be practicing, right? So when we come to a new section, like we're coming to post form submission, right? Just make another Flask app, right? So that's what I'm gonna basically walk through this. So, and then we'll do this, basically just use the code here to, just for practice. Okay, so let me go back to my form submission. So I have my form submission file here. So I'm gonna break this out into a new window just so we can see what's going on. So I'm just gonna say code, period. Move some stuff around here. Okay, so I'm in the directory. So following our checklist, I've done the first step. I've made a directory. So now what's the next thing I need to do?
Download Flask into
Right.
the files.
Yeah, create my virtual environment, right? So I'm going to say, that was weird. Pip env what? Install Flask, right? Okay. So you may have to type python-m on your system, but basically this is going to go through. You're going to see my pip file pop up. It's installing Flask and it's pulling all Flask's dependencies and it's going to make the pip file lock. And it's basically this huge file is just keeping track of all the current dependencies for everything that Flask uses. Okay, so if you want to make sure it worked, let me close this up for a second. If I say pip list, I should see Flask, but I don't. Why don't I see Flask?
You need to run
Go into the shell.
Yeah, I got to activate my shell, right? So I say pip env shell. Okay, so you should see something like this. If you're on a Mac, it actually indicates that you're in a virtual environment, right on the front here. I can't figure out how to get that to work in Windows, but anyway, now if I say pip list, I see all my Flask stuff. I see all the dependencies that are the basic dependencies for Flask. So I have my Jinja 2, I have my Flask, I have the is dangerous, all this stuff that Flask uses behind the scenes, okay? So what's my next step once I have my virtual environment running?
Open the file.
Create your server.
Yeah, create my server. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to make it over here because I don't like TouchWorks. So I'm going to say, click on the new file, call it server.py. And I'm just going to steal the code from the platform here. So the server.py file, I'm just going to take this. So I'm going to, it works better when I copy it directly. Because usually sometimes when you click the copy button, it puts in like weird spaces. So I always just copy it like that and then paste it. And let me spread this out a little bit. Okay, so just a quick review. What does line 1 do?
Importing Flask,
So we import the Flask class, right here.
and then also templates. Allows you
Yeah,
to
and
sync
also the
that.
render template method. So to get the template to render, I pass the string version of the template that I want to render to the render template method, right? So am I done?
No, you need to.
Need the templates folder though.
Yeah,
so-
I need the templates, right? So let me just run the server, see what happens. Oops, wrong one. Say Python server.py. So my server starts, no problem. I can go to, and I get this Jinja exceptions templates not found, right? So if I go back and actually make my template folder. So I'm going to say new folder, and it's templates, right, with an S. And it's called index.html. So I'm going to make that. So new file, index.html. And I'm just going to populate this with just the basic HTML. I'm going to title it so I know where I'm going. So it's index. And then I'm just going to give it an H1 of index. Okay, so now if I go back and try it again, I get the index. Okay, so if I wanted to add a second file, if I wanted to create I don't know, what should I make?
Script.
Not scripts. So I'm talking about like a second route, like a second HTML file. That's Tyree. That's what you asked, right? Was it Tyree?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
where I was having troubles
Yeah.
with.
So if I want to make let's say I want to make a show.html. Okay, and we'll talk more about what index and show means as we get further along. But I'm just going to call it show for now. If you're using the Windows command, it shows. Okay. All right. So show, I'm just going to say, I'm going to call it show. Oops. Okay. So how do I make this show page appear or connect this show page to my Flask app?
Route.
Yeah, so I need to make a route for it, right? So I'm going to say route. And I'm just going to duplicate this one because I'm lazy. Laziness is a virtue, by the way, for a programmer. So what should I call the route?
The index, the function name though, right?
Yeah. I was actually going to make a mistake on purpose. You stole my thunder. Yeah. So if I don't rename this function, it's going to error out, right? So I need to change when I duplicate this. Don't fall into this trap, right? So you want to change whatever the index name is. So I'm going to change it to show. And I'm going to change the name of my file. Tyree, what's up?
Yeah, so when I was watching like the videos on the platform, the instructor there, they would put their HTML in like a own folder. They put it in like the static, and then they have like a CSS folder, HTML folder. Will that work? Because I see that you put your extra HTML folder inside of the templates. And so I kind of like did what they did on that video and put it inside of my static folder.
I think the static folder was just the JS images and not the HTML. I think that's the video.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't think that, because the only way to get a view to render using the render template function, it has to be in this directory
through the templates. Okay,
Yes.
that was probably where I was messing up then. Is
Okay.
I like misremembered how that video went or something.
Okay, yeah, but that's cool. I mean, it's good practice, right? So if I want to set up a route for this, I'm just going to call it show, right? And so now I've got my show, and so everything, my server's still running. So if I go back to my browser and I want to get to my show, I just say /show, and I get to show, right? So, and I can create just regular HTML links to get to each of these routes. Okay. Any questions about this? Okay,
My, I'm keep getting module, the module flask. I don't have a module flask.
okay. Make sure that you are changing into or creating the virtual environment and then running pip env shell. That may be the issue.
Right, so the step is install flask and pip env shell, and then the third step should be I should be able to run the debug, right?
Yeah, so just to go over, where am I? Oh, that's not it.
Did you
Yeah, so
post the note on how to do that somewhere?
the note.
Like your notes on how to do everything?
Yeah, it's on GitHub.
It's on GitHub. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So so you need
The
to
checklist. Yeah.
Yeah, the checklist. Yeah. So, but I'd ask that you do this, like use mine as sort of a jumping off point, but make
Yeah.
your own. So it's, yeah.
Okay. Thank
So
you.
Caesar, you make the pip env install flask, and then do you run the pip env shell
Yes.
and you create the server file?
Okay, no, I don't create the server file.
Yeah, so create server.py, and then you need to add yeah,
But
so
what if I'm in an assignment already? I'm trying to debug the assignment to use the local 5,000. Do you still want me to create the server in order
yes.
to upload
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, so every assignment we do, we're gonna basically go through the same checklist. So every assignment, and again, I'd like you to follow along with the program when you do the platform. Actually, do what they're doing. Code along with them. So yeah, for each one, you're gonna basically make a separate. Like for day 5, I'm gonna make a separate. I'm gonna make one for post form submission. I'm going to make one for redirecting. I'm going to make one for hidden outputs. These are all the reading and assignments for today. I'm going to make a separate Flask app for every single one of them.
Yeah, I got the separate folders, but I'm saying because the assignment is titled, the assignment is already titled.
Yeah.
Let's say I was doing the understanding routine. That's the title of it, .py. Why won't the server appear on the web page if I'm trying to call that file instead of calling server.py? That's what I'm trying to understand. So I have to change every file name. I have to change every assignment to server.py in order for it to work.
Yes. Yeah. So you're basically, what you're going to do is you're going to go into each of these folders. So like when you do the counter assignment, you're just going to say open an integrated terminal. And what I would recommend is just when you open the integrated terminal, open a new Visual Studio Code window. So you can just say code period, right? And it'll open a separate window for you because you're basically creating a brand new application. So once you're in here, you can open the terminal and do everything, go through the steps again. That way it keeps everything separate, and because you are gonna have like what 10, 15 different server.py files. So you want them in separate directories. Tyree.
Oh yeah, so not to beat a dead horse real quick, but just so I'm clear, like we can't make another. We do like another render template thing to then put HTML files or something in a different file, or is the render template like specific just for that? So I'm just kind of getting confused how like if you're trying to make like a larger page or something, you wouldn't just want like 30 HTML files in one thing, right?
Oh,
or
I
is
see.
that
Okay.
like
Yeah.
I just feel like there could like there's a better way to organize that.
And I believe I think you can. I think I did.
I know it's
Later
not really
on-
necessary, but it's just like I was just wondering.
Later
Yeah,
on, we're
no,
gonna
no,
create
yeah,
like
because-
apps in apps, right? So
Okay.
modularization is gonna come way later in the stack.
Okay.
Yeah.
Alright.
But I think what you're concerned about is like if you have templates, you're going to have like 30 different HTML files in here, right?
Yeah.
So I think you can, as long as you're inside the templates directory, you can make subfolders. You just
And then
have to
just
link
use like
to
the
it.
dash, like
Yeah, so you just
dash
have to
whatever the
say
folder's
like
name.
// home, whatever.
Okay.
Yeah, I think you can do that and it will be able to see them.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
thank you.
Sure. All right. Okay, so today we're talking about forms. So let's get to the close all this stuff. So to make a form, I'm going to basically just use this form that they have. I'm going to simplify it a little bit. So I'm going to copy this and I'm going to paste it into my index.html. So down here, I'm going to say paste. Okay. So we did this in Web Fundamentals, right? We would make a form, but basically it didn't go anywhere. It didn't do anything, right? So when we make a form, we have to specify in the heading of the form this action, right? Does anybody know what this action does?
What's the question?
Say again?
What's the question?
What does, so we have this line 13 right here. We have this form, regular old form HTML tag, right? It has this action attribute and this method attribute. What do those do? What is the purpose of those?
In order to go back to what we were talking about yesterday about the classes and stuff like that with the method and stuff.
Yeah, so it's, so if we wanted to make a class on this form, right? We just say class, you know, my form, right? Whatever. Right, so that's how we would grab it or use it for use the styling and stuff. But this is a built-in attribute on the form HTML tag. So what does action mean?
So whenever you submit the form, it actually goes to that route.
Yes.
So it tells the form like where to go, what to do.
Exactly right. Yes. So the action will tell the HTML, action tells the HTML where to send this form on our backend. Okay. So we have a label for our form. We have the input type of text. We have the attribute name, and then this is just the input, the submit button, right? So let's take a look at what we get when we do this. If I go back to my app and I go back to index, I get a form here, right? So if I type in a form, right, whatever, put something as the name, I get this. Okay, so where do we go when we see this message?
Server.py.
Server.py, right? So if I go to server.py, keep passing it, there we go. So there's basically no route associated with this form, right? So it's trying to send it to a /users, right? It's trying to send it here, but there's nowhere for it to go. So what do I do in this case? How do I fix this problem?
You gotta make it on the server.
Yeah.
.py, right?
Yeah, I got to make a route for it, right? So if I say app.route /users, right? So I'm going to say def users. Doesn't matter what you name the function, but it should, make sense. So I'm going to say, I'm just going to return an empty string so it doesn't break. Okay, so now if I go back here, if I go back to my application, go back to the index. Now if I hit create user, now I get a different error message. So in coding, this is called progress, right? We have when we get something like a different error messages, we're moving in the right direction. So it says method not allowed. So what does that mean?
Can't use that decorator.
It has to be a different type, maybe, or like
Different type of what?
like can it not be a string? Is that or
String's okay, right?
Well, does that mean that you have to actually tie it to something and they're just looking for it's like it's not can't find the method, so you have to actually physically put it in a different form in Python.
Well, so it can find the method, right? It's finding the route, but it's just saying I can't do this. I can't use the method. Now, methods are, we talked about the get method yesterday, right? So as soon as you go to a website like google.com, it makes a get request, right? So what we're doing here when we're dealing with forms is we're trying to make a post request. And in order to make a post request, we have to tell the route that post requests are allowed. So in addition to the user's route, we have to add this second argument to our route decorator.
Hey, David.
And I'm just going to post it in here, paste it in here. So methods post. The methods can take more than one argument, but we're just going to use post for now. So now that I've got this in here, let's see what we get. I'm going to save the file. Try to save the file. There we go. Go back and try it again. Okay, so now I get nothing. So let's take a look at the platform. So to be able to access what we're getting from our forms, we need to add a couple of, well, we need to add at least one new function, right? Or that's a function. We need to add this requests. I don't know what this is, an attribute. But we need to add the requests we need to import the requests from the Flask module to be able to access the requests that are coming in. Okay, so I'm going to add this to my server.py file. So up here, I'm going to say request and spell it right. Is it request or requests? Request, okay. So now to access what I'm getting from the form, I'm going to call I'm going to use it's the request.form will give me access to what the form is passing to this route. So I'm just going to print it so we can see what's coming in. So if I go down to my post, I'm going to say print. It's going to say just print request.form. Okay. So now I move this to the side. I'm going to try to position this so you guys can see what's going to happen here. There we go. All right. So now if I go back and I go back to my form, so watch the terminal when I submit the form. So what happened? What happened? What did I get when I submitted the form?
A response?
I got a response. What does it say?
You posted it?
Yeah. So I get the let's see, I'll say Tyler because online's weird. I'm gonna say Tyler Maxwell. Okay, so when I submit my form, this is what I get. I get this kind of weird looking, it says immutable, multi-dict. What is this? What data structure is this?
A tuple?
It's a tuple, right? It's a tuple, and it's an immutable, it's a dictionary. We're going to treat it like a dictionary, but it's a tuple. So it's kind of a weird hybrid of a dictionary and a tuple. So to get access to what I typed in the form, which is my name, right? I'm going to reference this. It's almost like a key value situation where I've got the key and this is the key and this is the value. So if I come back down here and say, where is it? Let me just print it on a new line. I'm going to say print request.form. And if I grab the name, and if I'm going to refresh just in case. So to access what's being passed into the form, I call it kind of like you would a dictionary, right? So I would say request form name equals Tyler Maxwell. questions so far? James.
So when I run this, in my command prompt, I'm getting the same immutable dictionary, and then I'm getting the line that says the post.
Uh-huh.
I'm getting a get underneath it. Oh wait, now I see that you have a get there. No, can you run it one more time just to?
Sure. So if I come back here, if I click create user, submits my form, I get what I'm printing, right? I'm printing the entire form, all the form data. I'm taking out the name, and then it shows me that it's hitting my server with a post request. This just means a post request is made to the user's route, and then it just says which version of HTTP it's using. And then 200 means success, or that it worked.
Okay, so mine is also running a GET request, and when it doesn't, like, you see how your page is showing blank after you do it?
Uh-huh.
Mine immediately just brings back up the form.
Okay.
It's probably because he copied over the return redirect and got sent back to the form, I'm guessing.
Yeah, did you paste this from the?
Yeah, mine has the return redirect.
Okay, yeah, so that's why. So you're returning the redirect. We haven't got to the redirect yet. But yeah, that's if you return something. I'm just returning a string. That's why it's not posting anything.
Okay.
Yeah, but redirect is what is the next step. So you're one step ahead of me.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. No, that's fine. Any questions so far about what I've done? Okay, so where does the name come from? Why is it name? How does it know it's my name?
The file.
So what the name is, or the input?
Yeah. So the input, I give it the input of name. So right, if I say change this to secret, right, and if I go back and rerun it, now it's not working. What do I do? Mess something up. What do I do? Huh. Might have to restart the server. Let me try that. Huh. I don't know why it's not coming through. Okay, but it's supposed to be whatever I select as the name is going to be the key, and then that will be. I don't know why it's not working. I'll have to mess with it. But what we pass in here as the name on the input should be
the label name.
Yeah.
Is it because the label name still name?
Oh, maybe.
No, you got to refresh the form page. I don't think you refreshed it after you went back.
I didn't.
I don't think so. So refresh it now. And then if you have submitted again, it should.
Bad request. Name. Huh. So I'm
well, now you're trying to access a key that doesn't exist because it's secret now.
Oh, that's right. I'm printing. Yeah. Thanks. That's why. So yeah, what Ed's saying. So I'm printing request.form. I forgot to change this. So I'm trying to access name and it doesn't exist. So I changed that to secret. Now I need to change this to secret too. Oops. Yes. There we go. So go back. Now I'm a clever human. Okay, cool. So what we set as the name value in our form will be the key that comes in. So we can establish, like, we can call this whatever we want. So if it's an email, we're going to call it obviously email. We're not going to use something like secret. That was just for an example. So on the form, when we set up our form, the name we put here is going to be the key in our dictionary. And then the value will be whatever gets submitted from the form. Any questions? Because I totally screwed that up. So if I'm happy to say it again and have it work this time. Okay, so let's update our template. So I'm gonna go to here. Oops. Oops, I picked the wrong one. Sorry about that. Okay, so what are the steps we need to take if we want to add a form to our application? So I'm going to say add a new heading, say add form data to Flask. So what's the first thing we do?
Create the form in your HTML.
Yeah. So we want to create the form in HTML. So let me HTML. So I did. I'm just going to take our form here, copy it, paste it here. Okay, so we create the form in HTML. We set it up to, I'm going to take this class out just to get rid of the clutter. Okay, so we set up our form, our action, our method, the label and the input is sort of, we want to focus on the, and I'm going to change this to something that makes more sense. I'm going to say name, there we go. Okay, so once we have our form, what do we need to receive the form?
Route.
Right. So we need to create a route to handle our form. And that I'm going to copy from what we did. So the route to handle the form is this one right here. And I'm going to change this return statement. So I forgot to do that. So we'll do that in a second. So back to a template. So we create a route to handle the form. So that's going to be Python paste. Okay. So now all I'm doing in the example is just logging, and let me change this to back to name. There we go. So we make I'm just going to say the action attribute on the form corresponds, and I'm going to misspell that. Yeah, there we go. Spelling has nothing to do with intelligence, by the way. The action attribute on the form corresponds to what? In Python.
The route?
The route, yeah. So the action on the form corresponds to the route in server.py. And what else? Well, so I skipped a step up here. What else do we need to do before we can create the route?
Import it.
Yeah, we need to, first things first, import request from the Flask module, right? Which is, we'll do that.
Request is spelled wrong.
Is it REQ? Thank you. There we go. Python. Okay, so that is, how do I import that? It's,
Put it next to the templates.
there it is. So this. I got lost. Where am I? There we go. Oh, no, it's up here. So paste that. Okay, cool. So so to add form data, we create the form in the HTML, right? We import request from the Flask module. We create a route to handle our form. I'm going to move this down.
So is request like one of those like predetermined terms like render is from Flask or okay?
Yeah, so it's and I'm gonna have to look up. It's okay, so it's got to be because we're calling a form attribute on it. So request, I'm gonna look up what request is. I'm drawing a blank, but we say request and then dot form. I guess the form would be the, so the form is that if I open it up,
Just the HTML, isn't it just the HTML tag though?
it's the HTML tag, but it's the it's
Probably
this.
an object with a function in it somewhere.
Yeah, so it's this one here. Let me find a better one. Let's keep one that doesn't say secret. So we generate this, the immutable dictionary. Well, let me copy it. Let me see if I can. It's not letting me copy it.
But the request doesn't just have to work with a form, right? Like it could work with other things, like if you had like I don't know, like a button or something that you wanted, or I'm kind
Yes, it works with other, like if you wanted to
Like
send data
types.
through like in a GET request, the request is basically how you grab what's coming in from the browser. Yeah, so it's not just request.form. There are others. I think you can get like environment variables and things like that, but we're going to use it primarily to just get form data.
And if you had like multiple forms, you'd have to add like the class name at the end of the request.form and then the class name or something.
So if you have multiple forms, you're going to have multiple routes. So if we're going to have a route or a form to say like update user data, and we'll get into this once we get into SQL, but yeah, you'll have a form that will have a separate route for different things how you want to manipulate the data. So we're going to talk about,
that makes sense.
Yeah, we're going to talk about CRUD next week, which is CRUD is create, read, update, delete. So you're going to have a separate form and a separate route to create data, to read it, to update it, and to delete it. So, well, primarily to read it or create and update, but those will be separate routes. But this is basically going to be the syntax anytime we want to get data from a form. Okay, I think that's. Let me just fix that. Okay, so getting back to James's question about the redirect. So I'm just returning a string. So that's not ideal, right? I don't want to just return. I just did that to so it wouldn't crash. So we want to, when we accept form data, we want to do something once the form data is submitted, right? So in order to send the user somewhere else once the data is submitted, we need import another item from the Flask module. So getting back to the platform. So we import this redirect. So let me do that. So up here with after request, we say redirect. And instead of just returning a string, we are going to return redirect. And what does redirect take?
A request?
Sorry?
A request?
Not a request. So redirect is, so that we have two options. Well, I mean, two of the options we have. We can either render a template or we can redirect to another route. Okay, so usually with a form submission, you're going to redirect to where the form came from. So in our case, it's on the index page. So we're just going to redirect to the route. So we want to give it a string that represents where we want the form, where we want the web page to go once the form is submitted, right? So it's what I had before was horrible, right? We don't want the user to submit a form and then just see a blank page, right? So we want to redirect the user once they've submitted the form, usually to some other page, or we'll send them back to this page if there were errors in the form or were issues with validations, like they didn't type something in. We'll usually redirect them here, or we'll redirect them to whatever makes sense, right? Whatever, like if it's a login page, we'll reroute them to a dashboard or something like that. So now if I run this, let me make sure my server is still running. I think it is. Oh, it is, okay. So now when I submit this, it goes away, and this isn't an ideal user experience either, but it's just redirecting it back to the page where the user created or submitted the form. Okay, questions so far? Try to put these side by side. Okay, so
It wasn't the route, the users. So wouldn't you need to
yes,
redirect it to users instead of
right,
just the dash?
good. It's like you guys always like steal my thunder and know exactly where I'm going. Yes, so so the route we use to handle the request, and let me get some of this out of here so we can see what's going on. So once our user submits the form, we have a route that handles what the user submits. Okay, so when we submit a form, like if I redirect, or let's say that I just rendered the same template, right? If I just re-rendered index.html, right? So basically what you want to do is when you have a route that handles form input, you don't want to render a template. That's what I'm trying to say, and it's getting jumbled. So we always, whenever you have this, whenever you have methods post, you should always have redirect. Okay, because what happens if I say render template? If I render template and I say just index, or no, it's not, that won't work. If I render template and say index.html, right? Since that's the same thing, right? I'm basically, if I'm redirecting, I'm sending them back to the index page. And if I render the template, I'm doing the same thing, right? So if I do this, if I say Tyler and I create user, it's, if they hit create user twice, right? If I do this twice, it's going to resubmit the form, right? Which is, if we're doing something like, if it's an e-commerce site and somebody's submitting their credit card information, if we re-render the template, it's going to charge their credit card again, right? So that's, which is a horrible user experience. So whenever you have the post method, always redirect somewhere else, okay? So instead of rendering template, always, always, always redirect. Okay, questions about that? Okay. All right, so let me see. What did I do? I broke something. Oh, I redirected to the index, sir. There we go. Cool.
And that dash is just like is that like a shorthand? So like, how does it know it's users though? I guess was what I was wondering.
What do you mean?
Oh, it didn't redirect you to the users. Never mind.
Hmm.
Because I
Yeah,
just see like the routes users, but then your redirect just has the
slash.
the
right?
slash.
Yeah. So we want to differentiate between routes that are display routes and routes that are handling data, right? So when we're just displaying a route, when we're just going to index or we're just going to show, we can render the template, right? Usually you're going to have a separate route for handling data, processing data, and a separate route for displaying data or routing the user where we need to go.
Okay.
Okay. Any questions? Okay, let me see. So getting back to platform. Okay, so I want to talk about sessions. So sessions are, well, let me ask, what are sessions?
Like visits?
How do you mean visits?
I guess like the time you spent on
Yeah.
a certain page.
Yeah, so a session is our way. So when we make a request to a website, right, that it's called, they call it stateless, right? So when I go to google.com and I refresh, right, if I refresh 5 times, Google has no idea whatsoever that I refreshed or visited their site 5 times. So each visit to a website you make is as if every other visit you've done never happened. There's no, it's not kept track of anywhere in any web application. Well, I shouldn't say that. The HTML protocol doesn't keep track of all the visits you make to a website. So in order to keep track of our users and to have a better user experience, right? So when you log into a website, it says, welcome back, James, or, welcome back, Chuck, right? It's able to basically remember when that functionality isn't there. So sessions basically allow us to keep track of the users that visit our site. But if there's no way, like if HTTP protocol doesn't have a way to track users, how do we do it? Like how does your bank know that you've been to their website before? Cookies, right. The strangest name you could possibly give to something. Cookies, and I have no idea why they're called cookies, but basically cookies allow the data to be stored on the web browser, on the user's browser. That way, when they return to our site, we can remember that they were there. Now, you never store anything on cookies or in cookies that is sensitive. Like you never store credit card data or anything like that because cookies are hackable, right? Anybody can gain access to them.
So the bank account wouldn't use cookies. It would be something different.
So the bank account would use.
Well, it depends on the cookies, because some websites use cookies to help you navigate your the browser, like the site on itself. And there's cookies that, like you say, to go to, let's say, just some other website, they take the information that you're looking at for products and send it to those companies. So you get stuff pop up of ads like that. That's 2 forms of cookies.
Yeah, but cookies, so that your bank would keep track of the fact that you visited, but they wouldn't keep track of your username or password. Well, maybe your username, but not your password or your balance or anything like that. That would be stored in the database, but they would use cookies to recognize the fact that you signed in before. Yeah. Okay, so how do we make a session? And actually, let me do this. Let's go back. I'm going to stop my server and come back here to the files and go to sessions. So I have my sessions directory. I'm going to open it in integrated terminal. I'm going to open a new Visual Studio Code. And I'm going to make a brand new Flask app for the sessions reading. So how do I make a Flask app?
Install Flask.
Yep.
IPMV.
So pip env
IPMV.
install Flask. Okay, so it's installing Flask. I get my pip file. It shows that I've, well, let's see if when it passed. There it goes. So it installed Flask. So as soon as we're going to be installing some other dependencies as we go along. So they'll pop up here. We're going to install bcrypt and a way to connect to our database. So all of those will appear here once they've installed. Okay, so I've installed or set up my virtual environment. So now what do I do?
Pip env shell.
Yep, pip env shell. Make sure that my environment's active. So I see launching subshell. If you want to make sure, pip list. Okay, you should see Flask, Jinja, and all that stuff. What is next?
Create server.
Yeah, create server.py. There we go, server.py. And you don't have to memorize this, right? I cut and paste it. I'm just going to challenge myself, see if I can remember it. So from Flask, import Flask. And what else do I need to import?
Oh, shit.
What else have we used?
Render template.
Render template, good. What else?
Was it requests?
Request. And I think that's it, right? Do we do anything else?
I think redirect. I don't know if we're going to use this
Redirect,
anymore.
yes. Thank you, thank you. Redirect. Session, there we go.
I have a question about this part.
Yeah.
Now that we're adding all these different things that we're importing from Flask, why can't we just import Flask? Like just import the module Flask instead of trying to remember the ever-growing list of things that we're importing from the module.
Good question. So like, why don't we just do this? Like, why don't we just say import star? Is that what you mean?
Couldn't you just say import Flask, like import and then like
Yes.
import the whole
So
module instead of the
you could
individual?
say import Flask, right? But then every time we use something from Flask, we'd have to say flask.flask. And so this allows us to minimize and that kind of reduce clutter in our code.
Okay.
And the reason we don't do what I did before, like what reason we don't do this is there's a lot in Flask. It's a micro framework, but there's still a lot of stuff and we don't want to import everything from Flask if we don't need it. So to make our applications more efficient, we import only what we need.
Okay.
Okay, good question. So redirect, so we render template, request, redirect, and again, we're gonna put this in our template, our Flask template, so we don't have to remember it, but there's, to use sessions, I think we need to import something else. So yeah, so we need to import session. Okay, so I'm gonna copy that and yeah, copy that and paste it. Oops, too many commas. Cool. And then I need to make my app. Flask takes dunder name. Okay. And then how do I end my server.py file? What always has to go at the end?
If name equals.
Right. So if dunder name, oops, equals under main. We want to say app, and we call the run method on our app. and say debug equals true. Cool. Okay, so if we want to use session, we also need to add the secret key. Okay, so the secret key just, we'll come up with a more secure way of doing this than just putting it in our server.py file. But for now, we're just going to copy the secret key and paste it right here. So this just allows for the use. Session requires that we have a secret key, and you can use whatever string you want, like if you want to use your children's names or whatever. But that just has to be there for sessions to work. Okay, so now we need to make a route. So I'm just gonna copy this or paste it here. So we have a route. What kind of route is this? Is that a display route or is it a data handling route?
Data handling.
Yeah, so it's going to get data from somewhere, right? I'm probably just going to rip off the form from last time. So where does it go?
Show.
To show, right? So we'll eventually have to make this route, right? I'm going to start with the form though. So let me see if they give us a form. I'm going to go back and get the form from before. So it's in here. Okay. All right. So what else? What did I miss? What did I skip?
Render.
Not. Yeah. Render. Right. So we need a place to put our form. So I need my templates folder. And I'm going to give it a index.html. And I'm going to paste my form in here. Let's call this index. Okay. So let's see if this works. I'm going to say Python server.py. Okay, so my server starts, no problem. If I go to localhost 5000, where do I go now? What did I mess up?
There you go, the server.
Yeah, so if you see the not found, go to server.py. So what am I missing?
You are the route.
Yeah, I'm missing a route for my index.html, right? So say app.route. It's called / call the method index. And return. How do I get that index.html to show up?
Render template.
Right. Render template. Pass it the string index.html. Okay, I go back, see if I got it, and I do. Okay, so if I look at the HTML, the action goes to users, right? So if I look at my server side by side, so the action goes to users. So that is, the action corresponds with what? Anyone?
What was the question again?
What did you say?
The action on the form, what does that correspond to in my server.py?
The route.
Yeah. So I've got my name value set to name and email. So I've got to set up the session. I've got this print statement just as like a smoke signal to see if it's going to work. And then I have session. And then for session, it's just like a dictionary, right? I want to set my session to username, and then I grab the username from the form. I grab the name, I grab the email, and I set it in my session to these values. Okay. And I'm just going to redirect to the root just to save time.
The username and user email could be whatever though, right?
Could be anything. Yeah, I could
Okay.
call it name, I could call it email. They're just, I think they're trying to differentiate so you know that they're distinct.
It's just the request form that has to equal the same as the HTML, correct?
Exactly, exactly.
Okay.
So the names here have to match the names that are provided on the input.
Okay, thank you.
Cool. So now if I'm going to go here, I'm going to test it out. I'm going to say Tyler Maxwell and my email. That is my email. So just so you know. Now, let's see if it worked. So it says got post info. So now it should be in my session. So the way I find out if it's in my session is I can basically use the session anywhere on the page. So if it's in my session, it should be accessible on any of the views. So to find out, I'm just going to come in here and I'm just going to say at the top, I'm just going to say session. Did I spell it right? No, I didn't. Okay, so now if I come back here, go back to my index, that's not the right one. Go to the right one. Okay, so now I get this secure session cookie. Username is, user email is what I typed in. Username is my name. So if I wanted to use this to render data, I could put it into the HTML. I could do whatever I want with the session data.
That was the gen, like what's it called? The gen code that you put in?
Jinja, yes. So I just, and you would never do this in production. This is just as a kind of a test to make sure that it works. Yeah, but you can access the session. So if I just wanted the session username, right, I could just grab that. And then if I refresh the page, it's still in the session. Okay. So if I wanted to say something like, H1, welcome back. I could put this in here. And again, welcome back. And then whatever so this is kind of a convenient way to pass data from one page to the next. Any questions on sessions? Okay, I feel like I've been talking for a long time, so I'm going to stop. That'll be it for the afternoon, or I'm sorry, for the morning session.